Can you hear that music? No, me neither. I was just dancing without music. Picking up the energy. It's the first day back after a long weekend. I'm tired, right? We're tired. It's starting to wear on us. The fucking news, man. Jesus Christ. I shouldn't have looked at the news today. But uh, the amazing thing is, today, one of my really great grad students, I'm on her committee, she did her thesis defense. She rocked it. And it was amazing. And we were crying during the defense because we were so happy and relieved for her. And she's just beautiful. So shout out to Crystal. Welcome to Have I Told You the One About? And today's story is The Secret of the Radical Fairies and the Dinnertime Twos. I'm super excited to tell you about the Radical Fairies because they're amazing and they're great. My best friend's a Radical Fairy. He asked me today how many wigs I had left. Apparently, not very many. I decided to put this one on. This is the one that I use. Can you see the back? This is the one that I cut pieces out of. I'll cut a little piece out and I'll stick it in some wig somewhere for a little extra bit of flair. But, sometimes it's good to pull out the trash and just remind people that, bitch, I'm punk rock. I can wear anything and look good. Anyways, I'm thrilled that you're here, and I'm going to tell you about the Radical Fairies. So if you haven't ever heard of the Radical Fairies, you need to know that they're a queer identified group. Let's say this. They're a pan-gender, pansexual group, meaning they could be any gender or any sexuality. But the fairies that I go to at Brighton Bush Hot Springs are gay male, and it's anyone who identifies as male. Trans men are welcome, and anyone who likes having sex with men, so men who desire men. But there are all kinds of fairies all over the world they're like pan-gender gatherings where any gender goes, and anyways, there's all kinds, and they're all over the world. But a long time ago, this guy named Harry Hay was in the Mattachine Society, and the Mattachine Society was the first or successful, they say, this is like gay history, but things change. But it was the first successful lobbying group for homosexuals, and they wore like suits and ties, and they looked very respectable, and they were doing shit in the 50s, and they were really productive. They managed to get things moving. And Harry Hay was in that group. And in the 70s, when things got looser and people did more drugs and everything got a little freer, Harry Hay was like, you know what? I don't think I'm just gay. I think gay is a thing that's fairly conservative and mainstream. And I feel like I've got this sissy energy, and I'm excited by the world, and I'm wildly erotic, and I want a greater degree of sensuality and freedom and love and subject to subject consciousness, where you don't see people as objects, you see them as people. What a radical thought. So the Radical Fairies are radical in the sense that they are very much into a culture of permission. They are trying to create greater community, greater love, greater sensuality, greater embodiment, greater joy, greater sense of community, of what it means to be an actual citizen. I always think the idea of citizenry has really gone out the window. What an interesting time to think about it too. How we participate as citizens. What do we contribute to the world, to communities, to our sense of belonging? How are you making other people feel like they belong? My friend just wrote, ask 10 fairies what radical fairies are, and you'll get 12 answers. I was going to make that joke and say, if you ask 100 fairies what fairies are, you'll get 500 answers, because everybody's got 5 answers for that question. So people really define the fairies in wild ways. So I'm giving you my version of it, which because I'm here talking to you and giving you a version. And anybody who wants to be a fairy can be a fairy. So fairies are self-determined. If you want to be a fairy and you feel like you're called to being a fairy, then you're a fairy. And the gathering that I go to It's in Brighton Bush, Oregon. So it's in Brighton Bush Hot Springs, which is in the Willamette National Park. So it's in a park, and it's at this naturally occurring hot springs where they have tubs, and people live on the land. It's off grid. There's no cell phone. There's no internet. There's an emergency telephone for the people who live there. But if you're visiting there on the land and you're there for the hot springs and a retreat, you stay in these little cabins of 4 to 6 people in the woods, and you're off grid. There's no connection to the outside world. It's phenomenal. It's so great. I always say that the radical fairy gatherings are kind of like Burning Man. Burning Man, you've probably heard of, is one of those chosen communities where people get together and they build a city. And this gathering that I go to is 120-ish, 180-ish to 200, 180 to 200 gay guys who meet in the woods twice a year in the winter and or in the summer. And they don't build a city. There are only 200 of them, but they build an intentional community. They build a container for people to do work, to explore things. If it's a culture of permission, it's also a culture of exploration. And all gatherings are organized. There are events, and those are just organized by the people who attend. There's workshops all day. You can go to a number of different little huts and have workshops. And the people who the things that get offered are simply the people who go and what they have to offer and feel like doing. So you'll get the ridiculous to the sublime. You'll get the yoga and God, I don't know why I'm drawing a blank, but you get people have yoga things, and there's anal massage, and there's singing, and there's Sufi dancing, and there's sobriety meetings, there's AA meetings or SA meetings. There is higher consciousness and poetry events and all kinds of things. And in the evening at the Brighton Bush Radical Fairy Gathering, the evenings, sometimes they have dances, they have story times or spoken word nights or interview nights, and they always have a talent, no talent show. And they've been doing these world no talent shows online recently, which is really exciting. Shout out to them. And the talent, no talent shows are exactly what they sound like. People who are wildly talented perform some number, and people who have no talent but great enthusiasm are also welcome to share the stage and do whatever ridiculous thing they want to do. And so it's just thrilling, the kinds of things that you get. Maybe I'll save some of those stories. I could tell you like best radical fairy performances. Oh yeah, I could do that. That'd be fun. Anyways, so Harry Hay in the 70s thought, I'm going to get a whole bunch of other people like me together who are weird and wild and radical and want to change the world and have this. And he called people together, they had a gathering, and then it was like seeds thrown into the wind. It slowly grew and it spread and it went around the world, and now there are gatherings. They just had a gathering in South Africa, and there are people I saw people performing in France at the Radical Fairy and in Tel Aviv, and anyways, there's people everywhere. This gathering that I go to, the Brighton Bush gathering, I think it's been running for more than 30 years. I think we just had the 30th anniversary, which is a really long time. It's quite amazing. And I've been going since 2002. February 2002 was my first one. So that's 18 years. And the thing that I really love about fairy gatherings is the core of the gathering for me is Heart Circle. Heart Circle is a ritualized talking circle, like you would expect. So you imagine the hippy-dippy idea of somebody holding a conch, and whoever holds the conch gets to speak. Well, it's that with intelligent grown men. And it's thrilling. It is profound. It is, it can really try your patience. And it's sublime. It is unbelievable. So I'll tell you the mechanics, and then I'll tell you the gorgeousness. We all sit in a circle or in a circle-ish because if there are 100 people there, you can't, the room isn't big enough to, so you pile up, you double up, and you lean on whoever's next to you. And we have a shawl that we wear, and if you're wearing, it's a shawl that there's a variety of shawls that people have made, and they're really cute. And you wear it, and when you have the shawl, you're the one who speaks, and nobody else talks, and you just speak from your heart. It's heart circle. So you say what's on your heart and mind, what's weighing heavy in your body. And having gone for 18 years, more or less, let's say once a year on average, and seeing grown men stand in a room with 100 other or 50 other men bearing witness to their stories, and they're crying and they're laughing and they're talking about the deaths of their parents or their overdoses or their other health problems, their mental health issues, their trauma from childhood, their hopes and dreams, what they're trying to build, what they're trying to call into their lives. People tell you the most intimate fears and joys within themselves. And men don't do that in the world. And so seeing these men, one after the other, get up and just be vulnerable and say, this is the big thing that's happening in my life, and I need to make it move. I need to get it moving through me. I need to get past it or through it or bring it along or whatever I'm trying to cultivate. Seeing that work happen in such a public way is very moving. It's deeply profound. And because it's heart circle, what happens if you're engaged in the process is your heart opens and you just realize how easy it is to love everybody. And you realize how hard you've been on yourself and how terrible you are at loving yourself, because when you stop judging other people and just love them, you stop judging yourself and just love you, and you realize all of the shit that you've been carrying around with you, which isn't going to just go away, but at least you get a better look at it. It's like somebody turned the light on in a dark room for a minute so you could see where the furniture was, and you turn the light off when you leave the gathering, and it helps you navigate that room of life a little better so you don't bump your knees on the coffee table. That's what the heart circle does for you. And it also is a great way for you to check in with your own heart, because you feel compelled and get up and speak, and you realize I've had the most profound aha moments at Heart Circle. And here's the really gorgeous thing, especially me, for who's really interested in story and the power of story and the power of story to heal and to normalize and to find community and to bring us in closer to each other. When you hear all of those stories from all of those men, you learn a great deal, not just about who they are and how they tick, but what's coming for you. You hear the 70-year-old, 80-year-old men, like my friend Silver Angel, who came out to was married his whole life to a woman. His wife passed away. They had a gorgeous life together. And then he decided he was going to explore his bisexuality because he always knew that he was gay and couldn't act on it. And then he had long white hair, and he would tie it up, and the girls would do his hair for him and do his makeup, and he was doing drag in his 80s. This was how he came out. And you get to see the beauty of that man exploring a new side of himself. And, you know, and within 2 or 3 years of meeting him, he died. And so I get to see how you can live well on your way out. I get to see what kinds of problems, what happens when your parents die. What can I learn from this? What those stories from those men are the most valuable teachings I've ever had in my life. In many ways, that place helped raise me as a gay man. That book, The Velvet Rage, right? All kinds of fags read this book called The Velvet Rage. And it talks about the damage done to gay men living in a hetero world, being raised to be hetero and having to hide. And the author, I can't remember his name, the author says that one of the best things you can do to overcome the shame of that you were raised into, the shame and self-hatred, is to open yourself up and be vulnerable. And that's what happens at in those heart circles. And all of those stories are part of the process of, oh, I lost track. And the author, that's what I was trying to say. It's good, it's just, this is why it feels like a conversation. The author says that um, that we need to be raised as gay men as adults, because you sort of get stuck at a certain age because you don't get to have those other experiences of being available and clear about who you're dating and falling in love, and all of that happens in secret. And so a lot of people get stuck in that emotional development. And I could not believe how much the Heart Circle helped me to unpack all of that terrible shit. Anyways, I'm telling you a really long story, but the fairies are amazing. That's Heart Circle. Now, at my first gathering, that was the preamble that got us to this point. At my first fairy gathering, I was so excited because I'd been doing drag in Toronto and Vancouver, but only with like one or two friends. And I didn't have any drag queen friends. They didn't do drag as much as me. They didn't want to do drag as much as me. And my best friend ended up going to the Radical Fairy gatherings, and one of our mutual dear friends, Daniel Collins. So they came back with stories. So I knew what fairy gatherings were like. I knew people would dress up in drag, not everyone, but some would dress up in drag for meals. And you'd walk into the dining room for breakfast, lunch, or dinner in some outfit, and everybody would tinkle their glasses, and you do a little parade if you dressed up. So I knew, various kinds of crazy stories of things that had happened, performances that took place. So I was really thrilled. And I went to this party in Vancouver just before the gathering, and I met a whole bunch of fairies there, some of them from Portland, some from Seattle, some from Vancouver, and they were all hanging out. And they invited me, and it was a dress up party. So I got to wear drag. So I got to do drag and hang out with a whole bunch of other drag queens, which I'd never done before. I'd only ever been with one drag queen at a time. I was a monogamous queen. But suddenly I was at a party with about 15 drag queens. And I walked into the bathroom because people were powdering their nose. And I thought, okay, well, I'm going to go do this, right? When do I get a chance to do this? I was so excited about being girly. So I run into the bathroom and I'm going to freshen up my nose. And this queen is standing next to me. And I was 30 at the time. I think she was about my age. She was probably about 45, 47, something like that. She was about, yeah, something like that. Darlene, the ambassador's wife. That's her drag name. It's her radical fairy name too. The fairies take little nicknames, and my fairy name is Cookie, Clear Heart, because I want to clear the path to my heart. But Cookie, and my drag name is Cookie. So sometimes they overlap. And Darlene, the ambassador's wife, it's her drag name, but it's also her fairy name. And she really is like the ambassador's wife. She's always doing good deeds and helping people out and borrowing ugly clothes so that somebody could have something to wear, but she never wants them to look as good as her. So she gives them the cast-offs. I'm kidding. I love Darlene. She's one of my best friends. When I don't go with my husband, I sleep in the bed with Darlene because we share a cabin, you share double beds sometimes. Darlene's my bedmate. She's a sweetheart. But I met Darlene in the bathroom, and I didn't know anything about her. I just met her. And my friend Luscious says, have you ever met Darlene, the ambassador's wife? And I was like, no. And they introduced me, and I said, hello, nice to meet you. And then she said, have you seen Darlene, the ambassador's wife's cock? And I was like, no. And I got confused in that sentence because it was the ambassador's wife's cock. So I thought Darlene had something in her purse that she was going to open up. She had some kind of trinket or something. And I was all excited. And so I was wondering and waiting. And she was like, well, do you want to see it? And I said, sure. And Darlene said, okay. And she sticks her leg up on the counter like thump of the vanity. And she shimmies up her pant leg. She's wearing a pantsuit, a women's pantsuit, and she shimmies up her leg and whips out her penis and says, there's Darlene, the ambassador's wife's cock. And I was like, oh, it's very lovely. I didn't know what to say because I thought she had a prop. No, she's just showing me her dick. That was back when I was naive. Anyways, so Darlene's going to the gathering. It's my first gathering. My best friend's there. Daniel Collins is there. All these people are there. And so I know all kinds of people. And the first night I arrive, you arrive usually around 3 or 4 p.m. and you get settled and then you go for dinner. So we did that. We had dinner, and then afterwards, it was in the winter. It was in February, and you're out in the woods. So everybody stays inside, and there's a big lodge, and we were all hanging out in the lodge. And there was this really, really sexy guy. He had tattoos on his face. He had crazy punk rock hair, dyed red hair that was sort of in a pompadour but messier. He had tattoos all the way down his arm. He had these circles and he had tattoos all over. And he had a beautiful body, and he was about my height. I was in love with him immediately. His name was Dancing Dragon. People called him Dee Dee. He's changed his name since, and she also changed her gender. Now she's a she, though maybe that's fluid because I haven't seen her in a while. Anyways, but at the time, he was he, Dee Dee was Dee Dee, and Dee Dee was standing there talking to somebody and telling them about his new tattoo and did what was it and la la la. But I missed all the detail of what it was. I just remember hearing tattoo, overhearing because I was eavesdropping, but I was actually having another conversation. And then when he was done talking to that person, I sort of turned to him and was like, "Hey, I heard you got a new tattoo." And sorry, I overheard. And he was like, "Oh yeah, that's great. Do you want to see it?" And I was like, "Yeah, of course." All I said was, "I heard you have a new tattoo." And Dee Dee said, "Do you want to see it?" And so I said, "Sure." And he said, "Come with me." And he grabbed my hand and he walked me through the crowd. And we went into the bathroom and he dropped his pants and he lifted his balls and he had a star on his perineum. That's the first thing. What is it with these fairies? Everybody's showing me their penises. Talk about a culture of permission. Anyways, that's how I met Dee Dee. I love Dee Dee. Dee Dee did the most fabulous clown in the world, Velveeta, Cheese. Anyways, that's a different story. So I also met this other boy. I fell in love with two boys. I fell in love with him and I fell in love with this other pretty blonde boy. And I ended up loaning him my dress and then I gave him my dress. Price. He was so cute. And he'd never been to a fairy gathering before either. So the two of us got to be fairy virgins together. So I had a lot of fun that night. I'd met new people. They were nice to me. I was in a place where I knew a lot of drag was going to happen. For the first time, I get to hang out really seriously for 5 days in the woods with drag queens. I thought it was going to be amazing. So I go to bed. I can't sleep. I'm so hyped up all night. I sleep maybe 3 hours, 4 hours. I woke up, it had to have been 5 a.m. And I laid there for at least an hour. I wasn't able to sleep. And then I was like, fuck it. It's my first morning here. I'm excited to be here. I'm not going to be grouchy that I didn't get any sleep. I'm just going to go put my face on and do something productive with my time. First morning, I go to the shared bathroom. I paint my face. I put on full drag face for breakfast at 8 a.m. And I put on my signature dress and crazy two-colored hair. I had blue hair in the front and it feathered out and it had black hair in the back. I still remember. I was purple dress. So like this teal blue with a purple dress. Oh, it was so hot. And I show up at breakfast in full face drag and everybody was like, who the fuck is this girl and why is she in drag at this hour? But I was so over the moon. I think people could see I was grinning so much I was all gums. And at breakfast I sit with Darlene, who's a sweetheart, and she says, oh yeah, at every gathering I always have a theme for dress up. Now I would say only about 20% of the people who go to gatherings dress up. They're the hardcore queens who like doing the drag, who are very interested in their gender fluidity, and I kind of performativity too. But drag, for a lot of the people I think who go to gatherings and do drag, are doing drag because it brings out this girly side in them that they just get to be more. And the performative element is like an expansion of that. And then there are a whole bunch of guys who wear skirts and, sarongs and walk around with their shirts off. And then there are a whole bunch of shy conservative, well, not conservative, but like socially conservative, like quiet types who are sitting in the corner watching everything happen and appreciating and taking notes. So there's kind of like every kind of fairy. I hang out with a lot of the queens who like to dress up because I'm one of the queens who likes to dress up. So I'm talking to Darlene, she says that there's themes for dress up. And I was like, you didn't tell me there were themes. I was like, what's your theme this year? And she said, oh, it's rhinestones and jewels. And I was like, oh, well, I don't have the theme. I brought so much stuff. When my best friend came to pick me up, we drive there. It's an 8-hour drive from Vancouver. When he came to pick me up, he looked and he was like, this isn't going to fit. I'm like, I'm really good at Tetris. And I just Tetris the shit out of his little car. But I had scores of drag. I brought everything I owned practically. And what I realized sitting there talking to Darlene, I thought, I want a pattern. And I realized I had brought all kinds of skimpy things. So I decided I was going to do twos. I was going to wear two outfits for every meal. So the first meal I didn't, I just had the one outfit. But I dressed for lunch, I dressed for supper, I dressed for breakfast the next day and lunch the next day and supper the next day. I dressed in drag, two outfits for every meal for almost the entire gathering. The first day I did it at lunch, I wore like a little bathing suit or whatever underneath, or maybe I changed into one. Oh, I did. I went completely naked. So I got up in the lunch. I did my little tour. I showed up. People tinkled. I did my little tour in my outfit. I had half of my lunch, and then I said to Darlene, "Okay, Darlene, I don't like to be outdone. You've given me a pattern or a theme for this gathering, so I've decided my theme is going to be twos." And she was like, "What's that mean?" And I'm like, and I stood up and I stripped off my clothes. I can't believe I did this. And I put on my other outfit that I had in my purse. I put on another outfit. And then I did another tour because everybody was watching. I got naked and people clinked their glasses again. And I did another little tour and I sat down. And I did it at supper. And I think by breakfast or lunch the next day, people started demanding it of me. I would come in and I would do one tour, and I'd done it 3 or 4 times already. So then they would just start saying, twos, 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 twos. And the whole lunchroom, the whole dining area would chant twos until I changed into my other outfit. It was thrilling for a fag who'd grown up in a small blue collar town and couldn't be a sissy and moved to the city and was still too much of a sissy and finally was hanging out with sissies or people who like sissies and think it's an advantage and not a disadvantage. It was amazing. Now I know what the X-Men children feel like when they end up at Xavier's school. It was so great. And the true magic of this was that I did that outfit change for every meal. And by the third day, I think it must have been, yeah, the third day, I did my twos at lunchtime. And I went back to my cabin because I was wearing something not very warm or comfortable or something. And I went back to my cabin and I dressed in my boy clothes for the afternoon. And I went back to the lunchroom looking for a friend. And when I walked in, everybody started to tinkle their glasses. And I looked around to see who was dressed up, and there was nobody behind me. And they were tinkling for me because I was suddenly dressed in a boy outfit at a meal, and they hadn't seen me in a boy outfit, and they wanted me to strut that drag as well. And I can't, it was just unbelievable to have 180 men recognize that all clothing was drag and to be celebrated for that and to be celebrated for being a boy, which nobody in my life ever celebrated. I was always a failed guy. And suddenly here I was being a celebrity, for the time it takes to walk. And oh man, did I ever strut it. It was just gorgeous. It was beautiful. Okay, that's sort of the climax of my story, but I want to tell you the capper because the capper really sums up what fairy camp is like. At one of those meals, I think it must have been a lunchtime because it was light out and a whole bunch of us were dressed up and not many people dressed for breakfast. So it must have been lunch. We were walking there were like 5 of us or so, Darlene and my friend Christopher Possum, I think, and Luscious and maybe Terwilliger Curves. We were all walking to go up to the cabin, to the lodge to have lunch. And it started to rain. And I was wearing a pink outfit and I have a little pink umbrella. And I said to my friends, oh shit, it's raining and I have a pink umbrella I could wear with this outfit. It'd match. And my friends were like, well, go get it. We'll just wait for you in there was a little forest shelter. It's like a yurt sized building. We're just going to wait for you in here. You go get your umbrella. It's just back there. So I did. I ran back and I got my umbrella and I ran back up to the forest shelter in my high heels. And I remember I opened the door and there was Darlene and Luscious and Possum and Terwilliger. And they were talking to this guy who was completely naked. His hands were above his head. He had leather ties around his wrists and they were roped over a post in the ceiling, a beam. And somebody had a little flogger and was flogging his erect genitals. He had a huge erection and they were doing some kind of S&M leather play. It was like a workshop. And my drag queen friends had stopped in to get dry and they were having a conversation with these guys who were engaged in sex play, in S&M play. And, the guy being tied up was just having a conversation and chitty chatting and I walked in and I chitty chatted with them too. And we were all having a conversation and then we left and we went for lunch. And 2 weeks later, when I was back home in Vancouver, I woke up from a nap one afternoon. And when I woke up, I remembered that moment of me walking in and seeing that and seeing my friends in drag and seeing the S&M play flash back into my head. And I thought, oh, that was an unusual scene. It took 2 weeks for me to realize how weird that was compared to everyday life, because the fairies create such a culture of welcome and permission and generosity that you don't even notice the things that are unusual anymore. You do, but you don't. Like, it never even occurred to me that that was kind of odd. It wasn't every day. How many people here, raise your hand, have seen that? I know there's 5 fairies that were listening. But really, and that's what the fairies are like. That's the culture of the fairies, that they normalize so much of what we often think is unusual, because they give you permission to be these unusual versions of yourself, these fuller, more idiosyncratic, unique versions of yourself. And you just butterfly. And some of those colors and patterns are rare and exotic. And you don't even think about it much because you're really paying attention to the people and not the product. That is the secret of the radical fairies and the Dinnertime twos. Oh, the fairies, I love them so much. I want to tell you a little, I got a little letter. Here's the time for the business, right? I got a little letter from a friend, my friend Talking Water, who's a fairy, and we've seen him. He did the flat screen TV. He says, I'm alone in quarantine, so I've been being artsy and creative and stuff. Currently, I'm working on a commercial parody, which has been rumbling around in my head and just needs to be materialized. Here's a screenshot from one of the characters, and it's okay to share it. Oh, this is so cute. Look how cute this is. Here's my adorable friend. Oh, I love that. Oh, Talking Water, you're just a genius. I love you. So there, and I got a message from somebody. I don't know who it is because they didn't sign it, and there's no name. There's just initials. But I'm going to read it tomorrow because this is long enough. And it's somebody sent me quite a nice, thorough edition of someone else's worst dates ever. So I got a worst date ever here. Okay, so you can send me any photos or stories at michaelvsmith.com, which is lovely, or tweeted them out, but I don't even know why I mention it because nobody ever tweets it. I have to say that there are only 6 stories left in the magic story bag. And I don't know what I'm going to do when I'm done the end of those 6 stories. I'm trying to think up other ones, and who knows, we might end up being a month of full-time, a month of everyday stories, and then you go dry. Then you try to figure out what else to do at 8 p.m. Oh, look, tomorrow it's a love story. My first boy kiss. It's a love story. This is a trippy. My first boy kiss was intense. You want to hear this story? Um, I want to remind you that you can, yeah, like this video. You can share any old videos on social media because maybe it's coming to a close. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm just letting you know that it's in the winds, that it's uncertain. You can click the notification bell so you can find out when the next story is going live. And here's your selfie time so you can uh, send me a selfie. I don't know if that's weird for you, but it's always weird for me. But I do love the selfies, bitches. Send them to me, please. Oh, okay. Do I have anything else to tell you? Stories, then what? Talking water. Nope, I think that's it. So, bye, lovers. You're amazing. Thank you for listening. Clickety click, boppity bop, kissity kiss poo poo.